for your interest in the sensitivity model and also other works of Frederic Vester. I prepared a little bit a small introduction about myself. I'm now working at the moment with my own system logics company, and we are basing our work on Vester's work, of course. But already since 10 years now, we are rather independent, and we also developed own software tools and web-based tools, and we did some big research in the last year. I have some honorary activities like president of the German Society of Human Ecology and various scientific advisor positions. And I'm teaching at several universities, among them the University of German Armed Forces, which is rather interesting because I have a good impact in the security sector by this teaching. And as you might know, from 2005 to 2015, I was working with Fredmund Malik at the Malik Management Center in St. Gallen. And we had a Malik Competence Center, Vester. I trained hundreds of people and was also attending many of the international scientific conferences at that time. And Fredmund Malik introduced or combined the sensitivity model with integration or with his management approaches, and branded it as Malik sensitivity model. And so there were also a lot of international teachings, rather good phase. And then the first part, let's say, of my professional life was the collaboration with Frederic Vester in Munich. It was over 20 years, very close cooperation, mostly about all the projects and publications he made in that time. And I think something of this might be interesting for you. So maybe my background is also something, it's geology and paleontology, which is already a very complex systemic approach and also very close connected to sustainable developments. And of course, history of life. And so I think that's an important, so this was before what I was already interested in huge systems. And then I met Frederic Vester, and yeah, he was a biochemist. At that time, he started with chemistry, biochemistry, radiation sciences, cancer research, and also brain research. And he founded then his own study group, as he called it, study group for biology and environment. And then it was over many years that he developed the sensitivity model. This was not one thing and then it was ready. So it was a continuous development over many years. And he also had a very interesting chair at that time, interdependency of social and technical change, already in the 80s, or at the Armed Forces University, which was specially created for him. He was also a honorary professor at the University of St. Gallen. And then he wrote many, many books. He made big traveling exhibitions, huge, also large exhibits. For example, for the 75th birthday of the German Museum in Munich, everything was about that way, our world, an interconnected system, systemic thinking, and so on. And then he was invited for many films and TV series, and he created computer simulations, games, and of course, many professional and big system studies. So many articles, broadcasts, prizes, a really rich life work he has achieved. And after his passing in 2003, Malik Management integrated all his works in Malik Management. And so just to illustrate a little bit the variability of these books, I don't want to bring too much time on it, but he started already in 1965 with Building Blocks for the Future. This was already at that time a cybernetic age, the survival program, thinking, learning, forgetting, phenomenon, stress, urban systems in crisis. So just to show you that this is a broad scientific basis behind, and he exercised it in nearly all areas you can imagine, or like in the cancer system, in the nuclear energy system, of course, value of a bird, or you have always systems, or a small system, or a tree, or water, or agriculture. So these are very early publications, most of them, unfortunately, only in a German language, or that is was a little bit the reason why he was not so known in the English-speaking countries. And then there came a lot of studies in the mobility sector, crash test mobility, and a big study, for example. I will talk more about it a little bit later. And then so finally came the report to the Club of Rome in 2002, the English version, then in 2007, and a big handbook of the sensitivity model, and yeah, a lot of big studies. So last year we published a book about his work, and we had 17 contributions, among them also Andreas' contribution. And it's about the methodology and current applications and backgrounds. And so I prepared a little bit step-by-step introduction for the history. So starting in 1976, so we had urban systems in crisis. These were studies, research projects which went over 2 years. So this was not just written. And then came the book, so-called sensitivity model, also over 2 years, a huge in the man and biosphere research area. And then came the big Ford system study, also a project over 2 years with like 20 people engaged in it. And then came finally the Club of Rome. And then finally the book, his last book, about the sensitivity model, Professor Vester in the Art of Interconnected Thinking. And at that time, so I can say I joined at 1985. I joined his study group for biology and environment. And so we began then to develop the software tools for Windows systems. And at that time, we had more than 150 licensees already working with the software license and having been trained many high schools and so on, and all huge companies you can imagine from A to Z, from Allianz already at that time, or then Zurich, big companies. Yes, and then came the integration into Malik management, into the Malik management applications, and Malik also made it possible that the first English version was finally published. And then now, since 2017, we are working, also I with my small company, we are working and developing new tools. And so finally, we published also that book at the moment. So this is a short overview. And maybe it's interesting to think about it. What makes the difference to other systems thinking approaches as far as I am familiar with them? So it's one of the only really structured methodologies to analyze complex systems. So it's really neutral, applicable for all areas, an iterative process. Participants are integrated from the beginning. We integrate qualitative and quantitative elements. A very big focus lies in pattern recognition. It's very error-friendly learning and understanding the system. Focus lies on relationships, impacts, feedback cycles. There is no quantitative modeling or simulation or prognosis. It's a very transparent process and also very easily the documentation. And so this is systems thinking implemented. And one of the most important differences to other approaches are the biocybernetic, how he called them, criteria guiding the whole towards sustainability and to avoid blind spots. So I made here some small animated to show you these rules, because they are really important later in the assessment of the results. Also you get some result or you make an effect system, but what does it tell you? And here these 8 biocybernetic rules are very useful. Also the most important one is negative feedback has to dominate in living systems. Next one is the system has to be independent of quantitative growth. One moment. The system must operate in a function-oriented, not in a product-oriented manner, using existing forces. And then we have multiple use of products and recycling, addressing real circular processes. And then we have symbiosis. And then we have biological design. And all these 8 rules, they are closely interconnected. And they really help if you have to assess later, or what does our feedback analysis tell us, or how do we have negative feedbacks, or is it a system which is a startup system which needs positive feedback and so on.
Gabi,
Yeah.
can you explain to the audience this difference between a function-oriented and a product-oriented operations of a system? So this point number 3.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Also it's interesting, oder? For example, also we describe it oft for the case of the automotive industry, which are really only product oriented or just producing cars and not thinking about the function, which might be caring about mobility and other also things where you are using cars for transport and so on. Or a system should operate in a also what is the function and not as a product-oriented manner. Yeah, that's good. Always good. Or you can, anybody can interrupt me anytime. Or that's good also. So it's a little bit more vivid and not just a talk. Thank you, Andrea, for your question. I'm writing currently with a Munich professor, a cancer researcher who has a big cancer laboratory and whom I met occasionally and who is so fascinated about the biocybernetic. And we are writing an article in Gary Smith's System Biology. We have been invited to contribute an article about current cancer research and the interesting combination, or how can we bring it together with the biocybernetic rules. So that will be a new article, hopefully. It will be published. Yeah, and then, so here we come now to the single steps. How does this work? Also the idea is always, or we have to start, we have to define a starting question, the system levels, the participants, system sketch, and then we go to the next step, selecting the variables, definitions, scales. Also I will go more in detail later also. And then comes something special, a systemic relevance check. Are these variables relevant to describe our system? And then we come to the assessment of the impact strengths, the so-called paper computer at that time. And then out of this comes an interpretation in the sensitivity map. We can really identify levers and risks. And then we come to the analysis of a feedback system, or only then, or it's really needs a good preparation to establish this kind of effect system and then come to the feedback analysis. And then from that big whole system, we derive some if-then scenarios and maybe simulation, or it's not the goal of a sensitivity model. And then we come to the biocybernetic system evaluation. And as you see, this goes in one direction, but the other one is also because you always are profiting from the results to improve the former steps. So it's an open process until the end. And the most important, of course, are the people doing this. Or we are not doing it for somebody, but only with somebody, because the people, they have the knowledge about their system. Yeah, so we can go a little bit. As I will share some of these slides with you after. So this is somehow, again, the same story, these 8 recursive steps. Very important, of course, we make a research at the beginning and we need a project design. And then when we are collecting the variables, we are describing them with fuzzy scales. And this is also, the third one is also a big difference as far as I know, to many other systemic approaches. So you are not sure if the variables you collect are really relevant for the system. So it depends. And here this gives us an orientation sheet, or it's like a matrix, system criteria matrix. And here it helps us also to see what is missing or what we can maybe aggregate, or can we leave variables away maybe. And then we come to the impact matrix, the cross-impact matrix also called, and we have a real important process in several working groups to find a consensus. Or it's not, and it really helps to bring all opinions together and to make a consensus. Or this is not a, also this is really has to be discussed. It's a hard process, but then people are on the same level of understanding, and it's transparent. It makes the impact strengths transparent, and of course, all this has to be documented, or that's that you can come back on it later. And then, of course, you can rely on the sensitivity map on the levers you have identified, and then you develop. Or it depends. You have to discuss what do we make out of the results now already at that point, the levers, which are the levers. By the way, in many projects, it's very interesting that we found out that management is really, as it comes always back, or good management, it is really so important. For example, at the moment, I had a study project with a student at the Technical University in Munich, and he was working about autonomous driving in the public traffic sector in the metropole region, Munich. And we found very easily out, also even if this was a student's project, with some interesting representatives of the sector, and we found out that the most important is not the technology or whatever, but the cooperation between all these different actors in the field. And we made a workshop at the end to present the result, and they were really astonished, because as usual there was, okay, big industry, what are we doing, construction topic, technology, and so on. No, also the biggest lever was the coordination and cooperation in the team of actors and responsibles, of course. So, and as I said, so here we are here, sensitivity map, and then we come here to our effect system and the analysis of feedback cycles, the interconnections, and here we have very good computer support, and then come partial scenarios also to test if-then measures, strategies, and we can simulate, and we have good tools for simulation, but we think it's not a necessary part of a sensitivity model, as already the name says. Or is it sensitive? Is it robust? In simulation, it is work. Or these of you who are doing simulations, they know it. It's a lot of work. Also the other 8 steps, they can be done in a rather, let's say, good time frame, but a good simulation, a really valid simulation, is a lot of work to build it up. We can do it, but it's, let's say, it's an extra project if you want. So this is why we developed now, in the meantime, our own so-called system logic software tools. And so they are web-based, and that's very good because we can do a lot of hybrid and online workshops. We practiced this during Corona times, even with China, with international teams. So that's very good, or a very good way to work together. I have always a look on the time, don't worry. So I just wanted to show you some project examples to show a little bit how it has been applied in the last years. So, for example, this is a future forest, a big project with 7 European countries, forestry industry and climate change. Or we worked with the Canton du Valais in Switzerland, and we made a regional model for 52 communities and so on. And we worked with European Research Academy in Italy and Nepal, and with a small municipality and other municipality and international organizations and international industries. So some pictures, this is just to give not to explain it in detail, but let's say we can show it how it works, and it works. It's really good, good results. And here in the Future Forest project, we even developed here we made a small simulation game for decision making. Here you see it, here it's in the middle, based on the system analysis. And we needed a lot of time and a lot of experts to do it. And then we have here with EURAC systems thinking, emergency helicopter system in Nepal. And so these people just in one day working on 4 topics. So you have a big possibility to do a short project with a good result, and it can also be a study over 2 years, and then it's a kind of scientific study. And here working with a municipality, and very interesting, starting with Vester's simulation game eco-policy. And here also, this also was a very interesting, huge project about a big investment over the city for like a lot of money for a new mobility, like 100 million euro. And so they wanted to have a fact-based discussion about this future new infrastructure which would define the city life for many, many years, for the many next years. So, and we always are co-designing the process with the people depending on what their needs are and what they can do. And then we had some activities in China and Kenya in the last years, also with UN Habitat, for example, in Kenya. And we are still working on healthy urban systems in this context. And here, this was our last project, a big joint research project over the German building and construction sector, together with the Architects for Future, which is a sustainability organization of German DACH architects for sustainable developments, and ourselves. It's a big study. We can also provide the link. It's a German study, of course. And this is also very interesting. I am also working on a dissertation project at the Technical University Munich, and my Professor Wulfhorst, he has been working a long time with the sensitivity model, and he made this very nice publication about 15 megacities, and he developed a kind of generic code of variables and also a kind of generic, like some feedback cycles, so that it has not to be too complicated. Yeah, and then, so here we come to a cost reduction where you will hear a little bit more later. And I just want to go in some details. I really prepared them for this evening. Some details, oder? So we had the first one, the urban systems in crisis, a rather simple approach, but a study over 2 years. The first small paper computers or cross-impact matrix. And then out of this came this big book or a big study research. And here you see, this is what it's really interesting, or that's really how it was. And so nobody could do it. So they made a big research over 2 years. This was in this 1980. And it was all based on system dynamics simulation. But Vester himself, he said, no, wonderful, but it was rejected by the planning experts, and soon Vester started to make his approach much easier and much slimmer and much clearer. So all this kind of system dynamic, and this, unfortunately, this book, as it is also in English and German, it's rather famous and it's so impressive. And then people say, oh God, but you cannot, this cannot be applied in a real planning process. So that's too complicated. Yeah. And so this was this one. And then Vester started with his own system studies. And as you see, for example, here we see an effect system about traffic in Germany. So it's already much clearer, or it's much simpler. And then came also, he introduced what he called the cybernetic role, or we call it now system sensitivity map. And so this was a very new way of describing the role of the single variables between active and reactive and buffering and critical. So, and upon the impact matrix, so you get all these variables in here, and then you can see where are the active levers, where are critical ones, and so on. So that's really so useful. I presented this at the German military leading general about the Afghanistan model many years before. And this was so clear. You can immediately see, okay, here are the levers, and we don't have to impact in the buffering variables to bring them up, or we have to use the levers. Yeah, and then came Vester and his projects, the software development, which also helped us a lot to simplify, also to simplify the process and the procedure. And of course, what was also important is the computer simulation game Ecopolicy, helping to have a playful approach. And then came the time with Malik from 2003 or 4 until now. Or Malik is still working with the sensitivity model, as he also has a lot of publications where he had very interesting. So some of them are also in English. So you find a lot of interesting information also in these projects. And what was interesting that Fredmund Malik was bringing together syntegration and sensitivity model. So we always did it together. No, and then so okay.
Gabi, this might be interesting for the audience as well. Yeah. You only told me just, I think this year you only told me that Vester and Stafford Beer met once.
Yes, yes. And they met once, yes.
And that is really unfortunate, because I think if they had met earlier and more often, this could have been very fruitful.
Yes.
But they met once personally, you told me.
And this was one of the nearly only travels where I was not traveling with Frederic at that time. I don't know why. So he went to St. Gallen. He met him in St. Gallen, I think even via Fredmund Malik. And so they had a talk. He did not really tell me later what they have been talking about. And this was short before both of them passed. So there was not no possibility. I have a good contact with Alena Leonard, and she wrote also about the sensitivity model in this Handbook of System Sciences by Gary Metcalfe. Yeah, thank you for your question. Yeah, this would be very interesting. And I'm still in contact also with Konstantin Malik in some collaborations, and also with Martin Pfiffner, who is doing the VSM model. And so we are still in a good contact and also collaborating in some integrations, even recently, also even 2 weeks ago. So, and so this is our work. This is the big study we did here, like 350 pages for the building sector. Yes, and then so maybe a short idea about the simulation game, or so that's just like make it very short. It's a fantasy country with 8 areas, so to say 8 variables. And you have 12 rounds to improve the situation. And then you have seemingly separated areas. And of course, they are all described with this kind of fuzzy scales. And with these scales, you can immediately understand the situation, the current situation in that variable. Or if it's red, it's critical, or yellow, so, and green would be a good situation. And so this is what we are also doing with the variables, also scaling the variables, providing them so you can, and of course, describing it. And so you have, for example, production, a good example, and the scale, okay, too low is not good and too high production is not good. So the optimum is in the middle. And so this helps so much if you have also management meetings and you have to talk about these variables or these to describe. Yeah, and then we have table functions instead of mathematical functions, also so we can discuss, but these you can draw them by hand, or you have to discuss, you write down, you describe what you mean, and then you say, okay, we have our scale. And if, for example, this is education on quality of life, and so we can say, okay, we have here a scale from 0 to 30, and below 10, it goes in the negative. So it has an impact of minus, and only in the first third, so to say, then it gets to improve. Or so, and this is how you can describe later all the interconnections, and if you want to install a simulation with it. And then, so you see all these areas, they are, of course, interconnected. And you get, yeah, we have now our online version, and it can be played also online now. And so we have also a lot of projects with students, international students. Very nice here, for example, this group of African students in the waste management education, master education. And we made like 50 cities. We helped them to use the network of ecopolicy for their own megacity where they came from. And we are also working with very small children, as you see in schools, teaching systems thinking at elementary schools. So also it's very broad possibilities, and also, of course, with innovation projects and so on. So that's, I'm just skipping this one.
Gabi,
Yeah.
there's a question in the chat from
Okay.
Julia.
Thank you.
She asks, do you think this kind of simulation also stimulates cooperation in what may be quite a discordant world?
Okay. Also I think you also we made the experience also with you when we started, oder? Also we all very often start our business or projects with eco-policy, because people, they can relax, they have, okay, we can show, okay, we know how this works, this is very easy, or we say, okay, oh, such a nice network, or no problem, or to solve it. But then they are really shocked that they can really don't manage to be successful with this easy and transparent network. And then they can, okay, so now we can try to do this with your company, or which are your variables and which are your most important connections? Or is this the answer to the question, Andrea? I cannot see the chat. Yeah,
I
thank
don't
you.
know, Julia, do you think that that's okay for right now? Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and so from the brain research, or came the idea, so also our brain has to process complex information anytime, and we have 10 hoch 9 bit per second information coming in, and then comes a reduction of information to 10 2 bit per second, and then it's through the interconnection. And here is what's happened in the human brain, that the information is interconnected with the existing information, and then it's enriched via the existing information, and you have a completely new understanding of your environment. And then this is also the learning process, by the way. So yeah, and this is what the sensitivity model helps, or to reduce, to capture from a huge amount of information, and then to reduce it on the relevant information, and then it will be enriched by the interconnections, and then there is a new understanding of the system. And yeah, also we have the possibility, also I want to show this one first. Or this is pattern recognition. And this goes back on LD Harmon, and even Salvador Dali took it up. And this is how Vester and how we are working now. How can we understand a system? For example, here you can start counting black and gray and dark gray and light gray squares, and you can make some tables, and you won't understand the system, but you will only understand it if you step one step back. and you see maybe only the pattern, but you don't see the details. And this is what is so important, and what is also a difference to many other simulation approaches, that you can step and you need only this relevance. So here, this would be the eyes or the nose, the ear, to understand what kind of system this is. But we don't go into details. And then you see, okay, a statistical gray value, which does not give us any information. And then, of course, if we only have a part of that system, it's also not helpful, it's not useful to make it blurring, because you need the whole system. And this is the first step, describing what kind of the question, when we start to work with the systemic question. Genau, and so maybe, if you like to hear Vester talking some minutes, we can, I prepared one part of this short video, like 3 minutes or so, where he is explaining also his approach, how to complete that kind of system analysis. I need a moment. I already started it somewhere. As in, of course, here we could also have a look in our software tools, or that's clear. So we can here, of course, work, and we have all our steps are software supported and can be worked out. Or for example, here the scalings come, and so you can imagine how nice that kind of discussion can be if you ask a team to define their scales, for example, education here. And then we have, of course, an impact matrix, or you know this. And we have a consensus finding tool where we can really discuss. We have 9 different matrices, and we can compare them and so on. And then, of course, we can here have the sensitivity map, which shows us here now the results of the impact matrix. And then comes the effect system, which is the best if it's as aggregated as possible and not a spaghetti diagram, because a spaghetti diagram does not help us. And so this is work, just work. And then we have also the possibilities here to have, of course, scenarios and simulation, but I won't go into this, as I said already. It's not necessary to do simulations. For us, we don't have that experience. Already, of course, we did a lot of simulations. Okay, I have to look where my video is. Wait a minute. I already had opened it. I cannot find it. Okay, maybe you have any questions in between as far as I'm looking for it.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can jump in, and while you're looking for the video.
Yeah, please.
There was one question from Nicholas.
Mhm.
He says, does the pattern recognition metaphor work because we already have a model of the image or the situation, right? So if you look at the Lincoln picture,
Mhm, mhm.
and well, and Gabi, you can add to what I'm saying. So I think the interesting, or what caught me into the methodology, was that you have a couple of provisions in the methodology that ensures that you really look at the whole, right? So this
Yes.
allows you to, if you go through the method, it ensures that you have the whole Lincoln,
Yes.
right? And then you can zoom out, and you only need to look at the big picture.
Mhm.
And it allows you to reduce the amount of information that you actually that you are processing, because
Mhm.
you actually you create a documented mental model for a whole group of people that
Yes.
then can share this mental model. And this is what I think is so useful around and I think this is pattern recognition
Mhm.
elevated to the group level, human group level.
Mhm.
I don't
Yes.
know, Gabi, how you would explain it, but that's why I like it, and
Mhm.
why I try to use this methodology.
Yeah, thank you. No, no, it's of course it's like this, and let's say it is very important how the group is combined. Also, of course, you need interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary or however you want to call it group who and the people bring in their different opinions and their different views. Or that's the process that you come. And sometimes it's really chaotic. As I saw this, I started with 350 people in Potsdam city and they were really fighting against each other. And then we had, okay, it was a big infrastructure project to be installed. And at the end, they could have a common view on that system and what should be good for them, or and you don't know it. I also mostly don't know it before, or I'm also dependent on the knowledge of the participants. As of course, I have now a lot of experience, but anyway, each company has different, or for example, each mega city has maybe the same invariant variables like infrastructure, but in one city it may be in a good condition, or in another city it may not be so important, or so on. Also, yeah, but people have to, and you have various stages where you get a neutral, also systemic check, or is it complete? Is a set of variables, and it's so transparent and very good. You show it to somebody, and then people understand immediately. They may say, "No, here something is missing." So it's so surprising, or they never saw it, but they can immediately understand that kind of impact matrix, for example, or an effect system, or so it's really transparent. But it's a work, or it's not so that you can just do it in a very short time. Yes.
Gabriele, rather than showing the video, I'm thinking there's still some questions coming up. Patrick has asked a really interesting question, which I'd be really interested in your view. Helpful to get into the sequence, the process of using this approach. So how do you go through the various steps of using it? That would be great if you could just spend a few minutes talking about that, because we've only got about 4 or 5 minutes left before we need to go to a break.
Okay, okay. Yes, of course we can, I can just reshare again.
Yeah, you should
Okay,
be able to do that.
I found that video, so I can show it now. So where is, I have to share. So, Ton freigeben. Let's see if it works. Okay, I selected one sequence, one short sequence.
Reaction to events.
Okay.
And simply to test its sensitivity and robustness, and then to develop appropriate strategies. Therefore, I would like to come back to the computer image of Abraham Lincoln. That, by the way, also inspired Salvador Dali to paint an image. Concerning this painting, it is worth going into detail where Dali, apart from his muse Gala, has even hidden the original computer graphic. The paradox is that only through the fact that the details become fuzzy, the system is clearly recognizable. Long before the Japanese discovered the fuzzy logic as a hit for the newest technologies, we included the fuzzy sets in our system approach, that is, in the first UNESCO study published in 1979. This method, developed by Lotfi Zadeh in the early 70s, made it possible to finally include, apart from the quantitative data, also pure qualitative factors in our system models, since they are equally clear. Only in this way do the models get the necessary closeness to reality that has never been reached by using only precisely measurable data. As Albert Einstein already found out about such analysis, the result might be very precise, but wrong. We will now come to our last tool, the evaluation assessment.
Okay, okay, so these were so short.
I love it.
Yeah, so this is, yeah. I go back.
Can I just take one last question?
Yes,
Because
please.
Patrick was asking about this thing about the sequence of doing the approach. So if that's the sequence, is it? So that's the way you go about it.
Yes, yes. So
Yes.
this,
And I will go through this again, right? So this will be the next pass, yeah.
And then Simon asked an interesting question about how can existing practitioners add this to their own practices. So how is it that someone who's perhaps picked up on either soft systems or cybernetics or systems dynamics? What do you need to learn to try and get
Yeah,
this right?
yeah, also how can it be picked up? Of course, also there is an English book, oder? Also, so it's not so complicated to say. Of course, also we give trainings and also other people give trainings in also in using a sensitivity model, or now we with our system logic tools. Also it needs a little bit explanation, as I always observe, especially if you are doing it, let's say, in a workshop setting for a company or for other people and clients, then you must be very clear what you are doing. And then, of course, you can shorten the process. But you can, of course, make also, like we do it now, or a very short introduction. And we could do a half-day workshop, which would already be interesting. And we could do, for example, with the military, as the Armed Forces University, I always have 2.5 days for full training with 20 young officers. And they can work in 5 groups and have really good understandings of they have a lot of complex tasks like geopolitics. And so we did this in May. And they can do a very good model with no detail, let's say, but a rough model in these 2.5 days. But of course, if you are then have a real consulting project where you have to integrate the people, or this is a very important part to that the people themselves, and then they can start into the change or in the transformation or in the whatever they have to do in their system, company management, innovation. So, but it's important that they do these steps together and that it is a learning process, step by step. And so here the structure helps to go step by step to something which is at the beginning complex because there is a lot of information around, but then you can structure it and you come to the relevant variables, the relevant impacts, the relevant interdependencies, and then you can discuss questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the questions. There's a question from Russ, which I'd quite like to pick up. What attracts a client potentially to having a go at doing this? So, what's the idea that you're bringing to the people who are running an organization?
Yeah, also
that they cannot do this sort of thing themselves.
Yeah, it's of course often there are people who know the approach and they want to apply it because they have problems, complex problems, and sometimes, also very often, also there are people who already knew about Vesta or Malik, and there is a broad literature, or there are several hundred studies around of different authors, most in German language, but also in English language in the meantime. And people, they would read it and they find it interesting. As because we have a lot of really complex topics at the moment, and so people are helpless even, or what can we do, or we don't know what we have to do.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's an approach to prioritize what is important and to really share this understanding why this is important, and then to unite forces to work on what matters.